October 12th. I'm 5 feet tall. My favorite food is steak. My favorite color is blue. My best friend is Aaron Larson. And my newest friend is Gabe.
This is the last known footage of 11-year-old Jacob Wetterling, recorded only 10 days before his death on October 22, 1989. What follows is one of the greatest searches of a missing person in the history of the United States.
Wetterling was abducted at gunpoint last night while riding his bike with 2 other boys.
He grabbed Jacob and then he told me to run as fast as I could into the woods or else he'd shoot.
Just 10 miles from where Jacob was abducted, Jared Shirel was kidnapped and assaulted just 6 days before his 13th birthday in 1989. Decades later, he will be the key to solving not only his case, but also a series of attacks on other young boys in Minnesota, including that of Jacob Wetterling.
This crime was so horrific in nature, and it's gone on for 25 years.
How many psychopathic pedophiles can exist in a 20-mile radius? In St. Joseph, Minnesota, 11-year-old Jacob Wetterling lives with his 3 brothers, Amy, Trevor, Carmen, and his parents, Patty and Jerry. It was October 22, 1989. That night, Jacob's parents go to a dinner at a friend's house about 25 minutes away. They were going to come home late that night and planned that the children would stay home while they were away. They were halfway through dinner when Trevor called, asking if he, Jacob, and Aaron could ride their bikes to the local grocery store to rent a movie. The road to the store was quiet with farmland and few houses along the way. However, considering that it was starting to get dark, Patty responded negatively, suggesting they find other activities to do. The boys keep asking and convince Patty and Jerry to let them go to the store with their friend Aaron if they take the torches and go straight home after. St. Joseph's is usually a very quiet place, and the Wetterlings think their boys are safe.
It must have been about 45 minutes. The phone rang and they called for me to come and take this call, and it was our next door neighbor who called and said, "You have to leave that party right now and come home."
He came back to the table and said, "We gotta go." And I said, "You know what, aren't those kids back yet?" And he said, "Somebody took Jacob."
Patty and Jerry are terrified. They rush home to find Trevor and Aaron in a state of shock. Trevor was agitated, and Aaron was hiding in a corner, biting his nails. He just seemed to want to disappear. It was clear that they had witnessed something terrible. The boys explain what happened. After taking a movie from the store, Jacob, Trevor, and Aaron started cycling home. But then, Aaron heard a noise coming from the side of the road. A masked man threatened the boys with a gun, forcing them to get off bicycles and go into a ditch. At first, they thought he was just a high school kid making a bad joke, but they quickly realized how terrifying the man really was. He said he would shoot them if they didn't lie in the grass and put out their torches. So they followed his orders.
The silhouette probably sent chills down my spine to hear his voice again. And he asked Trevor to look at him and tell him how old he was. Same with me, and then same with Jacob. And then, he told Trevor to run as fast as he could in the woods or else he would shoot. And then Trevor was gone maybe 10 seconds. He basically did the same thing with me and told me to run.
Trevor and Aaron ran as fast as they could, knowing the man could decide to shoot them at any time. They turned, hoping to see Jacob following them, but both Jacob and the attacker had already disappeared. Trevor and Aaron frantically returned home for help. They were safe, but they had no idea where Jacob went or what the man was going to do with him. Listening to the story of Trevor and Aaron, the Wetterlings are desperate to get answers as to where their son was and who took him. Trevor and Aaron, visibly distraught, manage to give as much detail as possible about their attacker. Jacob's research becomes one of the greatest searches of a missing person in the history of the United States. Days go by and no one can find him, but the Wetterlings' best hope could come from another young victim, a boy named Jared Shirel.
There were details that I recognized right away. Description of the voice was similar. There was a number of details that were pretty consistent to my case.
On January 13th, 1989, 9 months before Jacob's death, 12-year-old Jared Shirel lived a happy life with his family in the small town of Cold Spring, Minnesota, just 10 miles from the Wetterling family. That night, she went ice skating with her friends. Then they went to a cafe to warm up. What began as a typical evening quickly took a turn for the worse. When it was time for the boys to come home, Jared approached his friend, Corey, who later told him that Jared had asked him if he could drive him home, but he had said no. Jared began to walk home alone, but when he did not return in time, his family began to worry.
Where the hell would he be? It doesn't take an hour to get from the restaurant to the house.
No one knew where Jared was, but almost 2 hours after he had greeted his friends, his parents saw him run home, distraught. Immediately, he said he had been attacked, and the man who had done it was still out there. His parents called the police, and Jared had to relive his traumatic experience several times to help capture the man who attacked him.
It was probably 9:30 when I started walking home. A car approached me. I just started giving this guy directions. The man had got out of the car. He grabbed me. He said, "Get the f*** in the car. I have a gun and I'm not afraid to use it."
Jared had followed the man's orders by doing everything he could to survive. He studied the machine as much as possible, hoping to escape and use the details later to help catch the attacker. He noticed that there was a police scanner inside the car. The man ordered Jared to put his hat over his eyes and lie down in the back seat, but he tried to take note of every turn they made. After driving for about 15 minutes, the man turned onto a dirt road and stopped the car. The 12-year-old was terrified as the man approached him and began to understand his intentions. Jared was sexually assaulted in the car. When it was over, Jared was terrified of what might happen to him and wondering what the attacker was planning to do next. With relief and surprise, the man immediately took him to Cold Spring, about 2 miles from his family's home. He gave Jared his snowsuit back, but he kept some of his clothes, perhaps as a memento or a macabre collection. Before he let him go, he threatened him.
He had said, "It's okay to talk about this, but if they come close to finding out who I am, I'll find you and kill you."
The attacker told Jared to run. If he turned around, the man would shoot. Jared ran home, relieved he could escape. Despite the horrible moments he spent that night, he's determined to take revenge. He tells the police every detail he can remember about the car and the man who attacked him, hoping to help them catch this monster. Jared reports that he was wearing camouflage and tells them about the police scanner inside the car. He even guides them along the path they have taken. To remember those events, he had to lock himself in the dark, lying in the back seat of a police car blindfolded, letting the memories take over. It was like facing horror again, a forced immersion in those tragic moments. Unfortunately, that memory, so vivid and painful, is the only guide he had to seek justice. 3 days after Jared's abduction, police identify a possible suspect, Danny Heinrich, a former member of the National Guard. He was known to law enforcement for his thefts, and during an arrest, an officer noticed that he had a police scanner in his car, just like the one Jared described. In a series of photos, Jared identifies 2 men he thought looked like his attacker. One of them was Heinrich, but the police can't charge anyone without evidence. Jared must return home, having suffered a defeat, knowing that the man who assaulted him and threatened to kill him is still out there harassing other boys and getting away with it every time.
I think I slept on my parents' bedroom floor for the first year. You know, the level of fear that you go through, the emotions, anxieties that you learn to overcome.
A few months later, Jared will make the discovery that will change everything. Remember to subscribe to the channel and leave a like for the second part.